Hey guys, what's up? Excited to be back. I'm sorry for the lack of videos recently. I have been a bit on a break. I was a little burned out, quite honestly, on content creation. I was streaming a lot. I was making a lot of videos. I've been kind of not being a good job of just taking care of myself, no IRL. So I was kind of taking a break to be able to kind of focus on that for a bit, just kind of readjust. Things for V Rising kind of slowed down, so I had the chance to kind of use that opportunity to relax a little bit. I've been playing a lot on the in my free time on this V Rising roleplay server. It's been a lot of fun. I'm a huge D&D guy, so it's up my alley and kind of a good way to kind of play the game in a fresh perspective. Which I might make a video on that in the future. But we are back with some content today. I wanted to talk about this dev update blog for those who didn't see it. It talked about a lot of things to know for upcoming content, their kind of vision on things, expectations on releases, etc. So I want to have a chance to kind of walk through this and talk about it, and kind of give my thoughts on it. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy the content, and glad to be back. So without further ado, I'm not going to read through the blog. I'm just going to highlight important takeaways and kind of talk about them, give my analysis, and give my thoughts on various things. So, first and foremost, they kind of talked about the early access learnings and how that's going to be structuring their future updates, because they found that they have core things and core mechanics that they want to change and kind of upgrade, so to speak, to better suit the experience. So they are delaying the new content because of this. What they said specifically, while we're initially hoping to bring our first content update this year, we recognize that trying to push out content on old and outdated systems in the middle of a rework will only serve to slow down production time overall. So the first big content update will be now slated for 2023, and it will be massive. So that's what they told us. There's a lot to break down with this. Because on one hand, obviously it's incredibly disappointing. We were kind of teased, October, November, there would be the first content update. Expectations were building every day. Is it the new zone? Are they adding the great sword weapon? How much are we getting? Because when you think content in the current game, like what's to be added, logically speaking, would just be the next zone, right? That would be kind of the new content to be added, right? And so obviously it's disappointing because we have to wait longer. There's no denying that. There's no hiding around the fact. That is just a fact for people. That is a disappointment. Is it a justifiable disappointment for both sides, both for Stunlock and for the community? Yes, it is. I doubt Stunlock wants it to be delayed. I'm sure they would love to get the content out as soon as possible as well. So I get that the reason why it was delayed doesn't necessarily mean I'm loving the fact that it got delayed, but I respect the idea that they want to do serious, deep, systematic work on the game. They have to rebuild a lot of their almost infrastructure that they have set up on the things they have core to the game to add new content. And they kind of talk about that because anything you add is going to affect the content loop and this and that. And so there's a lot of things that go into adding content for a game like this with how it's structured, with there's almost miniature loops of content that you progress through, and making sure it feels and is enjoyable progression, right? Because you don't want to just add the new zone and it just has the new version of paper and the new version of Dark Silver, and you just repeat that and it's not as engaging as it could be. And that's kind of a core fundamental flaw they're going to have as they try to expand this game that I'm glad that they are addressing up front. So on that note, I'm okay with the delay if the payoff is worth it, and I have faith it will be. I'm excited for what it will be, and I have faith in that. So that's the big news. That's the big disappointing news. In those regards, they have talked about that, while they did originally have it in the fall, because of that, they are hoping to have maybe some small updates. This came in their Discord, some messages that they were talking about where they were chatting with the community about this blog post. So my hope is they'll be doing PvP balancing changes. They'll be adding maybe some small things, some small reworks, kind of like building in some of these reworks that they have throughout the year, not just dumping it all in one day. So that's my expectations of what they mean. So I'm still expecting there to be changes for V Rising from now to the content update. I don't think it's just going to stay stagnant until then. I would be very surprised if it did, and honestly very disappointed if it did. At the very least, I would like balance changes for abilities and for PvP at the very least to just be able to change the meta and like enjoy a new version of what's good and what's not good, compared to like how it's very staple of in duels your Frost is king, in open worlds your Power Surge, with Rogue Blood and Chaos Volley is king, right? So I'd really enjoy there to be more options with that. So at the very least I would like something like that. But I understand if content itself does not come, but hopefully something does come. But yeah, so we'll have to see what they kind of mean with the kind of the small things that will come throughout the fall. And hopefully going from October/November to 2023, that means, no, fingers crossed it's early 2023, but they did not give any specific time period because I'm sure they don't want to add that onto themselves, but my expectations would be like sometime January through March. So improvements in content. So what exactly are they looking at? What's kind of the focus, right? So they talked about castles. They want to make it so it's more easy to relocate your castle, add cosmetics, and ways to interact with your castle. Please, for the love of God, let me actually sit in chairs in the game, or if I have something that let me actually interact with it in my castle, I think that'd be a nice touch. And then for like the hardcore PvP guys, never add decorations, they don't care. And in those servers, I wouldn't care. But having now played on the roleplay server, I'm not gonna lie, it gave me a fresh perspective on a lot of that stuff and a newfound respect for it. So I would love those type of interactions with the game. And they did say they are exploring a multi-floor system. Now this is not guaranteed, and this is something we talked about in the past that they kind of talked about on the Asmongold podcast and everything with Rich Campbell. The idea of having like multiple floors or having it kind of tower and build vertically, it would be really beneficial for servers, because it would allow land to not be so spread out, that like one plot of land gets so spread out that the map just becomes filled and you don't have anywhere to build. In fact, that they like made it so like you can only have of the 255 tiles you have, only 50 of them could be per floor. Then all of a sudden you can get these nice multi-floored towers that are more built vertically, and so there's actual more placement spaces for castles, which I think would be really, really good and really needed. So I think that would be a really healthy change. I understand there's a lot of technical challenges with this, but I do think it is needed. They also talked about castle servants having ways to use them for emergent gameplay, maybe make them into like castle automation works and stuff like that. So I think that's cool. They also are going to be polishing and adding things to the world as is in terms of visual, sound, and gameplay. So you can see here like a new like broken tower that's been like grown over in the world. Trying to find ways to fill in empty spaces and make the world more interactable. Adding almost like these what looks like a mini dungeon per se. As I said, expect new encounters, new discoveries, and new items to utilize. So this is them saying like, hey, on top of adding the new zone, we want to add a lot more to the current zone so they're more alive and fleshed out, and the points of interest can be more unique and not just kind of like bandit camp 1 through 5, militia camp 1 through 5, right? Which I think is awesome. Well, I'd like the bandits and militias and all that, taking out 3 of those on each in Farbane and Dunley and adding in some other stuff is never going to be a bad thing, right? Some of the most memorable zones in the game are the unique ones that aren't repetitive, like Church of the Damned, Brighthaven, this huge city of all these paladins and civilians and stuff, right? So you don't really remember the various militia camps. So I think adding more stuff like this would really help flesh out the world and make it more unique, in my opinion. They have, of course, new weapons and abilities. This is not a surprise that they're going to add new zones. They're going to add new V-Blood units. We know they're working towards the grand finale of Dracula, so we know there's going to be more V-Blood units, and with those units, there'll be new abilities, so no surprise there. We talked about when we broke down some trailers and stuff, some abilities and things that we saw there that are either just old and scrapped, or maybe it's being saved for another day. And, of course, the Great Sword. This animation is really awesome. This big two-handed, lumbering sword that they're going to be using. I think it's fun. It's going to, more weapons the better. I would love to have some type of like melee, like claw weapon, maybe like a mace or like a whip, kind of like, from Castlevania, right? So I think there's a lot of cool things. The Great Sword is, your very typical fantasy one that everyone loves. So I'm glad they're adding this. But the big takeaway here that I saw, which we talked about from the Asmongold interview, is this. Another feature we'll be experimenting with is adding a new layer of itemization. These new drops to hunt would let you modify your gear to augment and further customize your abilities. So there's a system in Battlerite that they had where basically if you built up mana from like attacking things, you could like alt cast abilities and have different modifiers to them, stuff like that. So maybe this would be something like if you get an augment, you can shoot three Chaos Volleys. They all do less damage, but you get a third Chaos Volley to hit or whatever that may be. The interesting thing, because we already talked about that, is it's these new drops to hunt. I find that interesting because right now, the only real thing that you farm are like resources. Like you don't go and like farm a boss nonstop. You know, you farm paper in the early game. You get scrolls and cotton in the mid game. You go get dark silver and then you run Bright Haven a bunch to get necklaces and all the various pieces of resources that come from Bright Haven, right? So that's your farming that you do in the game. But you don't like hunt things. Like there's not like a drop rate table that you care about that you're kind of fighting for, right? So I find this really interesting that maybe it's like a blood hunt system where like kind of like how you hunt V-Blood units, you hunt down like creatures with an augment that you want. That'd be cool. But I do like the idea of like, hey, if you want this augment that affects your chaos abilities or your frost abilities, you need to go to this zone and fight these things, and they have 10% chance to drop. I think that would be cool, and that a healthy adding to the current grind as is. So. But I really like that idea. I'm glad that they're actually going through with it after they talked about like a month or two ago. So I'm super stoked for that. Of course, PvE improvements. People are gonna gloss over this because they're like, I'm a PvPer. I like to 2v2. I run those 3-day long servers where I go and I sprint for 12 hours a day and I raid people. I don't care. The PvE improvements are important. The PvE is like 80% of the game on this at a minimum. End of the day, the PvP is prevalent, especially on like hardcore PvP servers, but the majority of the game you actually play is PvE. You want PvE to be improved and enjoyable. Like you do, even if you're a PvP or if you play any server that's not just like a dueling server, you want PvE to be improved. This benefits everyone, right? And so I'm glad they're recognizing this. And they said stuff like rebalancing things like repair costs and build costs. Great. There's stuff like that definitely needs to be reevaluated with how expensive some things are and how cheap other things are, where you just end up with missing so much of one type of loot. And you send your server out to get that one type, and they bring back a bunch of junk they just toss on the ground. They're throwing a random chest because you don't need it because you have 5,000 of that, but you just need your little gold necklaces or whatever it is, right? So I think that rebalancing is really good. They also talked about, like stuff like paper and everything like that, like tying paper to like a V-Blood unit so that you can get like the paper press and get that going and reworking the paper press so it's actually like worth giving attention to, adding variety to the enemy types, so new mechanics from enemies. Like you see like, this is like a patrol like guarding chests, like it's like a normal patrol, but they're like actually guarding something, so you have like a reason to care and want to fight them, and there's like some type of stuff like that, right? So I think this is awesome. End of the day, no one's ever going to say no to more enemy types. It's always enjoyable to have more variety in those that you fight, and increasing the quality of the gameplay loop is just going to make the game last longer for people that want to keep running the servers and wiping and keep going, right? So I like that. This little animation of like a new concept enemy type. This is super cool, by the way. I like this a lot. I don't know what it is, but this is awesome. It's like Dark Angel. I like it. They did talk about PvP improvements. I am not going to be upset by the fact that I don't think the game is centered around PvP. I think they made that clear. They want to improve PvP experience, but I don't think that's their focus. No, should it be? But they're going to do improvements like placement, new weapons and abilities. These are naturally massive improvements to PvP as well. So they've been watching this. They've been trying to tackle the rating system and improve and flesh it out. Something more robust and satisfying. I talked about this before. Rating is fun, but it's also not, in my opinion, because rating is very one-dimensional. You get your buddies. Maybe if you have enough people, one person runs, Sanguine Coil and Power Surge and keeps the golem going, right? And all that stuff. But rating is very bare bones at the moment. It's very set in stone. You get your Banshee defenses if you have tombstones, your Putrid Rats if you can, your Servants, and you defend your castle through thousands of honeycombs. And if you're attacking, you Siege Golem, try and deal with things until you can get the breach so they can't respawn servants, and you just try and brute force your way in. There is some strategy, some fun stuff you can do with it with creativity. I've done videos on that, but the core, just your typical raid, when there's an online raid, it does kind of get a bit lackluster after you do it so many times, and actually having a more robust and interesting rating system will only improve the castle defense system inherently. So I'm really happy that they're looking at that and actually like trying to solve that and make it better. So I'm excited about that. And then lastly, they talked about the general improvements, like I said, like the paper press. They want to move it to a V-Blood unit that makes it easier for players to choose when they want to hunt it down and gain the ability to invest in research. Awesome. They want to improve fishing. Dope. I fish here and there, but it's not like a thing I care about. I don't really ever care about fishing in games, so it's not like a thing I never really do. So, but hey, awesome. Like we talked about the servants, way to automate your castle, maybe something tied with your servants to otherwise increase the effectiveness. I know there's like already like, talks of like having your servants turn off your braziers when it's daytime and turn them back on when it's not, or like whatever, right? So a lot of cool stuff that they could do to just kind of streamline and make you really feel like that powerful vampire lord, right? And then they talked about sound and wanting to improve sound and everything. This actually, I never thought this to be a big thing for me, but actually, New World gets a lot of flack. The MMO New World gets a lot of flack, but its sound design, I've not actually seen a game that has done it better. And having gone from that to this game, basically, I would definitely love a more engaging sound system, because that keeps you immersed, right? And then they talked about marketing and how like doing these massive expansion-ish patches gives them more time to build strong campaigns. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. And yeah, so that's kind of what they kind of talked through, my thoughts on it. The big TLDR, I'm like, as I personally don't love the idea of them doing like these large expansions for content. I don't think you need giant expansions for content. I don't think there's anything wrong with healthy, just like monthly content patches, if even it's minor. I get that they want to try and build hype marketing wise and get people into the game with these large expansions. I get that, I do. But I just hope they don't go bare bones, just silent until 2023 when this comes out, because like that just like kills any enjoyment for the game. So I hope they, even with massive content updates, I hope they still have small content updates that do provide new content and balancing. Otherwise, like the game would just get really stale. And I got like 1,000 hours in this game, right? Like if I have to go another 1,000 hours of just this game with no changes at all, I'm not gonna hit another 1,000 hours, right? Because no one would, right? So I hope that's what they keep in mind with this. But yeah, overall, disappointing with the delay, but understandable, and I hope it delivers. I like the acknowledgement of what they need to work on and what they want to fix and what they're focusing on. I think everything they highlighted in this dev blog is really good. And me personally, I agree with like almost everything. I didn't really find anything I read through. I was like, oh no, why would you care about that? Like everything was like good. So now it's just time for them to deliver, and hopefully they do. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the content. Be sure to like and subscribe. It's good to be making another YouTube video. I know it's been a while, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, peace out.